next for the chopping block of Saturday 5. I think it's you, Dame Andrea Jenkyns, is it not?
It certainly is, yeah. Well, the Labour government has dropped free speech law after universities feared for China interests. Now, I was the former universities minister and I was tasked with bringing the free speech bill through Parliament. Now, the bill protected free speech of both students, lecturers, and we've seen so many high-profile cases of lecturers being no-platformed or even losing their jobs for having a different view to left-wing student activists. Now, this week, Labour cancelled this free speech bill, in part because they fear that the Act could cause difficulties with countries such as China. Yes, you heard that right. Starmer's government is bowing down to communist China, whom has some of the worst curtailing of free speech globally, by cancelling free speech here in Britain. I think Red Starmer is a disgrace.
Well, interesting. Andy, what do you make of all of this? Is this government becoming more communist by the day? Is it leaning into China, or is it all just nonsense?
Yeah, it's a load of nonsense. I mean, the idea that this Labour government is communist, I mean, is just laughable. And any kind of language like that. I mean, I've seen so much
but look at the
conversation. No. But hang on. But all this conversation about it's an authoritarian government, and they're just. I mean, it's not true. There is no evidence of this whatsoever. During the riots, there needed to be a strong message sent out to people who were inciting, and it's one thing setting out a strong point of view on Twitter or whatever platform it is. It's another thing inciting violence and hatred online. And I'm afraid that's a criminal offence, and so it should be. And we cannot have a scenario where people... I'm sorry, I don't believe in absolute freedom of speech. I believe there have to be limits on freedom of speech, and I think Keir Starmer's absolutely right to impose them.
Now, what do you make of this, Pete? Obviously, we've seen...
Are we saying there should be no limits on freedom of speech?
But do you think he's right to cancel it?
The bill, the free speech
in universities?
Bill.
On that particular bill, I think that's a challenging one. But I think if you look at the overall outlook of the Starmer government so far, I really, really don't think it's this authoritarian communist nightmare in the way that it's being positioned.
See, for me, if you actually look at the bill itself, one of the things that it's actually really focused on is giving academics the freedom to research into major areas. One thing that there's always brought up over this is the CAS report that was into puberty blockers. Most of that research was quashed or is underfunded because of universities not pushing and not being able to have access to the proper research materials, because they didn't like it. On academic freedom, the United Kingdom ranks 66 in the world. We're behind Burkina Faso and Georgia. This bill was so important but not just in terms of students' access to information, but in terms of Britain moving forward academically. We have some of the best universities in the world. So why not try and make them better?
But it also does away with
universe.
Non-disclosure agreements.
Yes, 100%.
Which actually it's imposed on a lot of students. If there's some sexual relationship going on with lecturers and students, and it's going to do away with that. So this protects people, and I think it's appalling that this is...
I completely agree with that.
I don't know if anybody saw the response from the government over its criticism when it was criticised for pulling the bill. They said it was to stop Holocaust deniers having access to the campuses and stuff like that. This bill has nothing to do with that. It infuriated me, actually.
There's a worrying trend, don't you think, that we saw the CEO of Telegram locked up has been arrested in France. We saw today that Brazil are going to shut down X, formerly known as Twitter. Right, Mark, what do you think of all of this? Is free speech under threat now with socialists sort of in government across most of the world?
Yeah, I find it quite harrowing, and I think of my friends. I'm 24, a lot of my friends are at university, going back to a master's, for example, and I feel like they're getting starved of accessing all kinds of debate and discussion and free speech, and I think that's essential. You need to be able to go to university and hear a vast array of opinions from all kinds of speakers, and I think that's the beauty of free speech and Western democracy, and I think what the Labour government is doing is actually taking that away, and I am very concerned for people my age that aren't really getting the right access to that.
What do you make of these criticisms of the Labour government, more generally on freedom of speech? Because, of course, we've seen quite a lot of that recently. How do they combat this? What is going to be Starmer's line when people start turning around and saying, well, actually, you're leaning into this censorship stuff, you're cutting freedom of speech bills? Well, how does Labour respond, Andy?
Well, actions speak louder than words. And I think, actually, when people look at the facts, and if you look at let's see what happens over the next few months, but I don't think you're going to see the advancement of a really authoritarian agenda from this Labour government. I just really don't. It's not in their blood. Actually, the irony is that lots of the people, the same people who are criticising Starmer for being soft on crime, and by the way, if you look at his record, that's absolutely not the case. In fact, he's been accused of being too authoritarian on crime. That's not my view.
People of the community.
Is there some criticism of the Conservative Party? Obviously, they oversaw a lot of these policies that Starmer's using today.
Yes.
So how do the Tories recover from that?
I think the main issue is, I mean, when I was a minister, even with TAST, we're trying to bring this through. The civil service is so woke, they're trying to block you at every level. I mean, look at Pretty. She got accused of being a bully.
Yes.
And thankfully, Boris backed her, because we know Pretty, she's certainly not a bully, just because she was challenging civil servants. So there's so much blockage. We do need to change the way in the top levels of civil servants and have more like we have in the US. I think that's
a really genuinely interesting question. How do you think that would? How would that manifest itself? How could we improve that situation? Because you're the ex-minister here, so I absolutely, and I've heard that from other people as well. How would we make a step change in terms of how the civil service works?
What I think we need to do is obviously the opposition party government, if it looks like they're going to go into government, they need to be getting their people ready.
Yeah.
It's more of a political role, isn't it, to ensure that actually legislation can get through. I mean, we saw with Rwanda, it had so many blocks from civil servants and unions. That's so undemocratic.
Quite. Well, I'd probably get rid of them all and start again, frankly. I think that might be the only way to move on. Is indeed. Over to you, Pete.
Right, the clock has struck 13. The Ministry of Truth has been built and Big Brother is watching. Welcome to Keir Starmer's Britain, where the main rule is do as I say, not do as I do. This week, Baroness Giselle Stewart, the Civil Service Commissioner, has confirmed a review into a number of appointments into the civil service by the Labour Party, who just so happen to be their biggest donors. Week after week, Sir Keir stood there and lambasted Boris Johnson for being sleazy and dirty and rotten, and Saint Keir could do no wrong. Well, isn't it funny, for 20 grand and a pair of glasses, you can get full access to him. This is the reality, that with its two attack dogs of Sue Gray and Matthew Doyle, Sir Keir has become the king of sleaze and the king of cronyism. The Labour Party has always been like this. They just hide it better. Welcome to Britain 2024.
Are you donning a new name for him, Sleazy Starmer? Is that what you're going for here?
Of course it is. The main one here is, I think it's Waheed Ali, who was one of his biggest donors. He gave him hundreds of thousands, nearly thousands and thousands of pounds, and got full VIP access. And the Conservatives asked one simple question: who gave him the pass? To get that level of access to the Prime Minister is a staggering level of security.
OK, well,
I'm sorry, and the fact for them not to just be open and say, well, he did it, she did it, it tells me that there is something going on here that is...
OK, so Andy, look, there's a lot of this going on at the moment. Keir Starmer's being criticised of cronyism. Obviously, we had him in the Rose Garden just a couple of days ago, I believe it was, saying he's cleaned up politics, he's going to be different. And, of course, we've obviously had his business advisor who was sat in that famous Rose Garden photo. What does this say to the public about what this government's going to be like?
Well, I think this is cock-up rather than conspiracy, but I did say before the break that I think this is really disappointing. As a Labour member, as a Labour supporter, it's very difficult to defend. It's a real shame, because I do think we need in some ways to clean up politics, and I think a lot of the rhetoric that Keir Starmer came out with in the run-up to the general election was right. I do think that Boris Johnson, in particular, debased standards in public life to an outstanding degree, and I really, really think he will be remembered as somebody who caused great harm in that respect. I think Liz Truss, the less said about her, the better. But I would say that, Keir Starmer and Labour, they have to practice what they preach. And if they don't, then they will be viewed in the same light. So I am concerned.
You've got some strong words. I can hear you there, Dame Andrea. Go on, go for it.
And Starmer and all of them, they're so sanctimonious. Look when he was in opposition. But they seem to get away with it.
Yeah.
Look at Beergate. I mean, that was pretty disgusting. I mean, Boris, he had...
There was no case to answer. We know that. We know there was no case to answer on that.
We know. They had all the takeaways delivered. There was beer.
It was a Daily Mail hit job.
I think most people in this room have been in a room with Angela Rayner. I often remember that very specifically. The fact that he suddenly conveniently forgot she was there. I just don't understand how anybody could say that that there's no case to answer. And I think Andrea is completely correct. The Labour Party have continually been
They
given
always
a
get
free
away
ride.
with it, but I don't think they will this time.
Why is that? Why do they get away
it?
with it so much? Was it because they're not in government?
Why?
Is that what it is?
Because there's a lot of the media, unfortunately,
Yeah.
tends to be left-leaning.
Oh, come on.
Gosh,
Are you
and
serious?
also, look at how many of those in the media, their partners are in the civil service or a relative. And then we've had so many leaks from the Cabinet Office, including people who works in the ITV, passing stuff on to them. So I think that's a problem. But why I don't think they'll get away with it this time, look at the approval ratings for Starmer, -16. I think people are waking up to the fact that Labour are liars. And also... Sue Gray is at the heart of
Yes,
this.
completely
Now, let's
agree.
not forget Sue Gray was a propriety and ethics person. She should know better than anybody what this looks like. But let's not forget her son got 10 grand from this donor. So I think it stinks. It needs cleaning up. And I'd like to see every media outlet, including the BBC, calling Starmer out.
Ryan, Mark, do you think there's a two-tier media when it comes to Labour?
Well, I think so, yes. And I think organisations like the BBC are definitely very lenient towards Labour. But I really have to echo the same sentiment as Andrea in terms of it really does stink, all of this sleaze. It's pure hypocrisy. Like I said earlier in the show, Keir Starmer was saying that he's going to clean up politics, life in public office, and as leader of the opposition, he was saying that the Tory party were handing out jobs to their mates, dodgy contracts, etc. But look at what we're seeing with Lord Ali. He donated £500,000 to the Labour Party, gets a number 10 pass. He hosted a post-election reception in number 10. Look at the sleaze happening here.
So Andy, look, so there's a lot of criticism, of course, about the unions getting their pay deals as soon as Labour walk through the door. You've got Lord Ali, you've got all these other things. We also, when we talk about two-tier media, we've not seen Keir Starmer ask a single question to GB News.
Oh,
yet.
come on.
Is that a sign?
This two-tier media thing is, I mean, the written press in Britain is overwhelmingly centre-right and right-wing. I mean, that is just an
I think our viewers will disagree with you, you know.
Well, I'm sure that
so
GB
the Guardian
News...
is right-wing, the Independent...
I said the written press is overwhelming. Of course, I'd never pretend that the Guardian is right-wing. Come on, let's be serious.
But the Guardian is read by people in certain industries.
The Guardian's not read by many people at all, let's be completely honest about it.
People who are in certain positions in society that influence huge amounts of public policy. There was a survey done at the BBC about what is the most popular the newspaper subscription. It was the Guardian by like 20-30%. It's staggering to argue that because it's right-wing majority.
Okay, the Labour Party is, trust me, the Labour Party is not about, and we're going to be talking about an issue around Margaret Thatcher in a minute, and that was on the front page of the Daily Mail yesterday, on a day when there were all sorts of other really important things going on in the world, and that was the headline on... I mean, the idea that the written press are somehow biased towards Labour...
Well, we know, but they did pull Boris for doing the decorations of Downing Street. That was a headline media for weeks.
I'm sorry, but I have to be a bit careful what I say about that. But I mean, that was bonkers. I mean, really, come on, that was not okay.
Final word, Ryan Mark. Come on.
Well, I just feel so, again, like I said earlier, I feel so sorry for the voters. How much coverage was given to Ian Caulfield as well, who donated £20,000?
Well, enough that he stepped down.
£5,000 to Rachel Rees, and then he becomes a director of the Treasury. How much coverage was given to that?
Okay, right.